Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Maps Mapunyane, and I'm very excited to be hosting this monumental event today. It's really exciting. And as a young entrepreneur myself, I feel like it's one of the greatest things of being a part of the entrepreneurial world is, of course, being a part of the solution of a very big African problem. And this is definitely one of the possible solutions and a great glaring gap that can easily be exploited in a positive way for the agri-food sector, as we'll be seeing a little bit later on. It's my pleasure to welcome you today on behalf of Econet Global Limited and global crop nutrition company Yara International. Econet and Yara International recently commissioned a study to examine the current landscape of what we call agripreneurship in Africa. And the results first presented and discussed in Davos, Switzerland in January earlier this year indicated that there is a limited focus on entrepreneurship in the agri-food sector and that existing programs rarely operate at scale. The study also pointed out that the African food sector or African agri-food sector offers an estimated $1 trillion opportunity, especially when connected with current technology revolution. These opportunities are here and they're now and they are ready to be unlocked by Africa's youth as a whole. And there are plenty talented young entrepreneurial African youth out there who are talented enough and able enough to be able to unlock them. We just need to make sure that we support them in doing so. And this is where Generation Africa was born, but of course with a number of questions. Firstly, how can we inspire young people to go into this lucrative multi-billion-dollar industry, and how do we meet their needs? How can we bring the dynamism of youth entrepreneurship to Africa's agri-food sector? And finally, what can we do to help the youth launch and grow agri-food businesses or business ventures that drive job creation, inclusive growth, and better supply of food? Today you will see how Generation Africa aims to make this happen, from changing the narrative to supporting young entrepreneurs on their journeys and of course to giving them a voice. And Generation Africa will build a community of agri-food entrepreneurs and transform the continent. And that is really one of the main aims. So allow me to introduce first and foremost, first of our founding partners, Yara International, a global crop nutrition company pioneering new and scalable models to drive the transition to sustainable food and land use.
We're really proud and excited to launch Generation Africa together with Econet. This is a project to bring the dynamism of youth into agriculture. Agriculture is already a large business in Africa, but how do we deal with both growing a business, feeding a growing population, and also look after the climate? Because today, 25% of the greenhouse gas emissions come from agriculture. I think it's possible to leapfrog in technology in order to grow food more sustainably, and Africa can play a key role. And that's why we would like to invite people to join us on this journey, because no one can do this alone. Together we can do a lot. And for us, it's important to tap into the tremendous talent that is out there, to get ideas, to get people on board that want to start businesses in agriculture, and to help visualize these ideas, to help bring scale to that. Successful entrepreneurs are the ones that see these changes very early. And I'm really inspired by Strive and what he saw very early on mobile phone technology in Africa, and he built a tremendous business based on that. Looking into the future now on the business opportunities and the agri sector in Africa, that's going to be a $1 trillion business by year 2030. So the ones that position themselves now to be part of that journey will see tremendous opportunities. And both we at Yara and Econet are looking forward to take part in that journey, to highlight opportunities and to help to bring scale. The key words for Generation Africa are talent and technology, and the opportunities are just incredible.
And that is really what it's about. The opportunities are just incredible. And our second founding partner who shares this driving vision is Econet Global Limited, a privately held multinational conglomerate with operations and investments in mobile and fiber broadband and data storage, telecommunication, cloud services, fintech, edutech, e-commerce, tech-enabled on-demand services, and solar panel and solar power to individual and enterprise customers across Africa. Here's a message from Econet Group Chairman, Mr. Strive Masiwa.
This is Africa Century. To seize all the opportunities out there, especially with the arrival of exciting new technologies, we together need to reimagine the future. This is Generation Africa. By 2030, Africa's agri-food sector will offer an estimated $1 trillion opportunity for young entrepreneurs across the continent. And this new partnership initiative we are developing together with our founding partner, Yara from Norway, is designed and has come together in the past several months because we know young entrepreneurs across the African continent need and want more support. This is why we are here today. Food is a big business, and market demand is only going to grow in the decades to come. What great opportunity is there? Telecoms isn't this big. Mining isn't this big. Agri-food is the greatest opportunity on our doorstep. The technology revolution opens a whole new doors to how people grow food, how they transport it, how they package it. Tools like mobile phones, sensors, drones, solar panels, renewable energy, artificial intelligence, robots, and all these are reshaping and making this sector more exciting than ever before in history. Our launch of Generation Africa today in Johannesburg is a call to potential partners across the ecosystem to join us in this vision. Never before has there been a more powerful moment in history to leapfrog Africa's agri-food sector from a net importer of food to helping to feed the whole planet in the decades ahead. That is our vision, and together we will make this Africa Century. We look forward to others joining the Generation Africa movement for agri-food entrepreneurship. Thank you all for being here. I'm sorry I was not able to be here myself today, but I look forward to meeting many of you in the weeks, months, and years ahead as we reimagine the future together.
And now a few words from Econet Global Limited Group Managing Director and CEO, Mr. Hardy Pemiwa.
You know, everybody is talking about the $1 trillion opportunity. It's an opportunity. And opportunities require something for them to be realized. They require talent, they require time, they require technology, but above everything else, this opportunity is going to require great commitment from the young people of Africa. The vision for the Econet Group is an inclusive, connected future that leaves no African behind. You know, Africa has this enviable and also unenviable position of being the continent that has got the most arable land, that has got a young population, that is extremely unproductive. You know, what we generate out of an acre of land, other parts of the world are generating out of 1/10 of the size of that land. For a long time, you know, I think that agriculture hasn't just been made to be attractive to young people. It's something that we were brought up to leave behind, something that the educated do not do. And yet there's a lot of money now that is chasing agricultural opportunities across the continent. It will be an indictment in history for this generation that is here now to not take hold of these opportunities. So at Econet, we're very excited. We're very, very encouraged by Yara's commitment to helping us develop our continent with them. And I think that it behoves us, the Africans, to be able to extend a hand and say to Yara, we're here, we're ready, we would like to develop this continent for ourselves. You know, if it's not us, then who? And if it's not now, then when? We have an incredible opportunity to make this Africa's century. So I think let's take up the technology that we have. Let's grab this opportunity that has been presented to us as young people, and let's go forward. Let's develop this continent through agri-entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Econet and Yara International have joined forces to change the way we innovate the agri-food business forever. And Generation Africa is a partnership initiative, as I've mentioned, that is strengthening the ecosystem for youth agri-food entrepreneurs. It envisions a future in which the energy of our continent's young people is poured into inclusive enterprises where underexplored opportunities in the agri-food sector are seized by innovators and disruptors that are creating new jobs, expanding perceptions of possibility, and accelerating an inclusive economic growth.
Generation Africa is about cultivating a movement. Never has there been a more powerful moment in history, nor a more digitally capable generation to guide Africa's agri-food sector into the future. That's why leading global crop nutrition company Yara International, Pan-African Telecommunications Media and Technology Group Econet have joined forces to launch Generation Africa. The initiative is searching for young entrepreneurs who embrace the space where agri-food meets revolutionary technology, and to strengthen the entire ecosystem that supports those bold agri-food entrepreneurs as they go from idea to full-scale businesses. This year, Generation Africa wants to change the way we see farming. The idea of farming as hard labor under the beating sun is over. With Generation Africa, farming is about everything from the seed in the soil to the moment the food reaches your fork. And it can all be done smarter. Kicking off with a high-profile GoGettaz competition to drive awareness, Generation Africa seeks to reach millions of talented young Africans with the message that agri-food entrepreneurship is the biggest opportunity in Africa today. To embrace this potential, Generation Africa will connect agri-food entrepreneurs to cutting-edge support. The GoGettaz contestants will network with each other and the Generation Africa team through an online platform that will continue to grow and evolve to include access to education, innovation, mentorship, business development services, and capital. By linking with other isolated initiatives that are already supporting young entrepreneurs, Generation Africa seeks to be a hub where collaboration becomes leverage for real change, and each contribution becomes part of a wider, more effective effort. The power of a collective voice cannot be overstated. Working together, Generation Africa becomes a collective voice to engage policymakers, influencers, and key decision makers across the public and private sectors on opportunities and challenges facing young agri-food entrepreneurs. They can only thrive when multiple sectors and actors consciously work together to develop a supportive environment for business innovation and growth. All our contestants will become part of the collective voice of Generation Africa to play an important role in shaping the future of food security on the planet. This is Africa's century. That's why we are launching GoGettaz, an exciting competition for entrepreneurs in the agri-food sector to grow their businesses. This year, the two grand prizes of $50,000 will go to one female and one male entrepreneur for the most innovative and scalable business ventures. There are innovations to be found in how we grow, harvest, process, irrigate, store, transport, package, sell, and consume food. We are looking for young agri-food entrepreneurs who are embracing the technology revolution to build agriculture businesses. And with cutting-edge tools like mobile phones, sensors, drones, and solar panels, we can reshape agri-food business models. To enter, contestants must sign up on the GoGettaz page on the Generation Africa website. The next step is to share a video that explains their businesses and tells the judges what they would do with the prize money. They will also be required to submit certain elements of their business venture. The most innovative, impressive, and scalable business ventures will claim a spot in the top 30. 6 male and 6 female finalists will be selected from their ranks to compete at a live adjudication that will take place at the African Green Revolution Forum in Ghana in September. 2 winners will embrace their destiny with Generation Africa and $50,000 to grow their businesses.
So a really exciting opportunity there that GoGettaz is running, and that will be a great opportunity for agri-food, for young agri-food entrepreneurs to be able to win their share of, well, not their share, but their share of $100,000 to $50,000 prizes for anyone who's innovative and can show us their sense of scalability and originality in their agri idea. But we'll touch on that a little bit later again. But one thing, once again, standing out there is the greatest opportunity in Africa today. And to speak a little bit more about that and speak about changing the narrative, I'd like to welcome onto stage, we have a wonderful panel. First and foremost, Luis Alfredo Perez. He's the head of BU Africa at Yara International, leading Yara's crop nutrition business in a strategic region where the company has established domestic operations in 7 countries, in addition to playing a key role in sustainable development and public as well as private partnerships. Luis, let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next panelist is Ada Osakwe, and she's a Nigerian economist, an entrepreneur, and corporate executive who is the founder and chief executive officer of Agrole Ventures, an agribusiness investment company based in Nigeria, which invests in African agricultural food-related companies. Thank you very much. Join us on stage. There's so much more as well to your CV, but I understand that if we'll get right through the panel if we end up telling everyone your entire achievements, which are incredible. I'd like to introduce very excitedly, actually, a young female black entrepreneur from South Africa, Tato Moagi. She is, she mentioned to me earlier that, what we're really trying to do is make agriculture cool to the youth, to be a part of it, to want to take it up and see the great opportunity in it. And she's bringing sexy back to agriculture. She's 28 years old. She's the managing director of Legaile Bannerang Farms in Mudimole in Limpopo. And she was the first South African to receive the acclaimed Nuffield Agriculture Scholarship in 2017. And Moagi describes farming as a divine practice. So let's give her a round of applause. And the last of our panelists, last but not least, is Dalamuza Mhlanga, and he serves as Group Chief of Staff at Econet Global Limited. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much to each and every one of you for joining us today for this conversation. I think it's always hard not to refer to Akina Desene's quote when it comes to his thoughts on the agri-food sector, and it's the fact that agriculture is an industry and it should be treated as a business. It's not just the farm. It's not just about the farm, but it is about the entire food chain. Ada, starting with you, your business is founded on the principle of making agri-food businesses work. How important is it to invest in the younger generation of farmers in Africa today?
I think it's absolutely important to invest in young people, the younger generation of farmers, because really it's investing in our food security. We have a situation right now that our average age of farmers across the continent is about 60 years old. Data's showing it. So basically, if we don't do something about it and get people excited, and the young people who are coming into the workforce, about 10 million of them every single year, they don't have jobs. If they don't get excited about agriculture as opposed to other sectors, the typical banking or whatever, we basically wouldn't be able to eat anymore because no one's going to be farming our food. We're trying to make agriculture sexy, right? We're trying to make it cool for young people. And as an investment person, we had to do that. Specifically, my work was more or less showing the investment case that they can live sustainable lives of dignity, and they can go out and say, I am a farmer, I'm an agripreneur. And doing those investment cases were everything from cassava or tomatoes, and showing how you can make returns of an internal rate of returns of over 20% in these things. There wasn't data.
Luis, Yara International is a leading crop nutrition business, and your company, of course, focuses on the sustainability aspect of it all and the public-private partnerships that you've established as a result, which is the driving force of making it all work. How do you think that Generation Africa mission of empowering innovative young farmers will be able to, benefit from this kind of partnership?
So as Yara, we have been in Africa for more than 30 years now. Now, we have understood from very early that in Africa, to really support the African smallholders and help them go from subsistence farmers into small but successful agri-businesses, we cannot do this on our own. We require public-private partnerships where different aspects of the value chain come together. Now, what we have learned is that one thing is to have the concept on paper and everything works, but in order for it to be sustainable, you need the tenacity, you need the engagement, you need the vision and the local knowledge of the farmers, knowing what the challenges are in their specific situations and villages. And there we have been missing this element of entrepreneurship. So what Generation Africa can bring to the table to these public-private partnerships is precisely that. Ideas, concepts that are effective, that can actually work because they come from themselves. From the people that know their own cultural settings and what people will really go for and turn it into a reality.
And I mean, I'm actually thinking of, you were stressing the youth issue so much, and you mentioned earlier, Ada, about the average age being at about 60 and everything. I mean, what is it going to take for us as Africans across all sectors, including government, to really try and look at that? Because it seems like the youth don't really have much of a play in any sector whatsoever, and I think that's probably one of the biggest parts to address, which is why I guess Generation Africa needed to come to life. Tato, we mentioned, I mentioned earlier about bringing sexy back to agriculture, and Ada had said that, trying to make it sexy with people such as Yara International. I say bringing sexy back, but it never really was sexy, was it? I mean, is this what made you get into it? You're aware of all the difficulties of entering the agri-food sector, and what would you say your greatest hurdle to overcoming this would be, and how would you make it more accessible?
Okay, that's quite a complex question. But the reason why I actually got into agriculture is growing up from understanding our country in the context where we come from, and we're now living in a democratic state. My father always used to ask me, "Are you free?" And growing up, I thought, okay, I can go to school with every other person of color. I have access, I have all of this. Of course I'm free. But as soon as I grew up and started realizing the agricultural industry, I thought, oh my word, this is a captured state. And so I'm a plant scientist. I did plant science, and learning more about agriculture just excited me. So I went in there blind as an entrepreneur in 2014. And it was the most difficult thing that I've ever done, I must say. It really tested me. But who I am now today compared to then is completely different. And I think the biggest challenge that I can say that is purely access. When I first started farming, I couldn't get access to workers that can support me. I was thinking about technology, I was thinking of innovation, and yet I'm working with people that haven't finished matric, that can't read and write. So you try to put processes, you try to formalize the industry, but there's no support. That's a huge problem, to say that there are lots and lots of passionate young people that want to get into this industry, but they don't know who to go to, where to turn to. And what is needed is support and access.
But there are also so many different sides to the agri sector as well. Agribusiness, you can still live that great lifestyle and everything, but it depends which side you approach.
And I think that's what young people need to realize, is that if you want to go into farming, and you need to become a business person. You need the technical skills, you need the business skills, you need to understand the compliance environment, the regulatory framework. So it really takes you out of it. As young people, we usually negotiate from a place of disadvantage. So we enter platforms and rooms, we want to speak to a Pick and Pay or Woolworths, and you by yourself, and you don't have leverage. And so you now have to build a network, build leverage, you have to interact with people, and that takes you away from your farm.
How would you say that we need to grow this industry and make it realistic and sustainable and impactful step toward a better future?
I think one of the biggest challenges, I think, sort of like speaking from an Africa perspective, is productivity. We are not the only continent, and sorry if I'm sort of like just lumping all countries into a single continent, but we're not the only continent that recognizes this opportunity. We are not the only group of people who are thinking about how to leverage technology in order to, produce food, not just for respective countries, but for the world. So as we think about growing the industry from an Africa perspective, we have to think about productivity. We have to think about how competitive we are with other parts of the world. From seed to fork, what are the key points of intervention, as it were, that will make sure that we are competitive and very productive? So what is it, how does that look like from a mechanization perspective in terms of the tools and equipment that you have on the farm? What does it mean for your seeds and the yields that you're going to have on your crop? How are you going to leverage technology to reduce harvest losses? How do we make sure that there's market access, etc.? And just making sure that from our own conditions and realities, we are making key interventions in these specific points to make sure that we're productive and competitive globally.
Ada, you seem like you wanted to say something
Yeah, I was
there?
going to say that he's absolutely right, that the world is moving ahead. They're learning how to farm without land. They're learning how to make plant-based proteins. They don't need cows anymore. You're making burgers with plants, right? So we could be easily very irrelevant if we don't keep up to the times with technology, and we have such an opportunity. It's a golden opportunity. $17 billion went into the agri-tech sector globally last year. It was a 40% increase. It's growing. It's one of the fastest paces of investments and industries where people are investing, but most of it was in the US and China. And you think about where they're putting that money, it's yes, the plant-based stuff, it's yes, start using locusts and insects as, plant feed for fish or whatever. But it's also things, it's just this value chain that Generation Africa is talking about. It's moving away from just the productivity, but saying who is buying from that farmer so that that farmer has, it's not a vicious cycle of prices, oversupply and suddenly the prices fall. It's now suddenly a sustainable market. It's money is going towards retail chains. Money is going towards even food delivery. So this opportunity of urbanization and where we're going, typically in the world, in Africa, and if we look at urban places around the world, typically that's about 40% of the GDP of most economies is centered in urban places. So let's think about that as we think about that opportunity for young people and for agriculture. I think it's essential.
Well, I'm guessing that's definitely one of the reasons as to why then Equinet was so interested in wanting to be a part of getting behind the empowerment of young African entrepreneurs in the agri-food sector.
Sure, absolutely. I think there's two ways to think about Equinet's engagement. One is we have a founder, Mr. Strive Masio, who is so invested. We invest a lot of time in inspiring and empowering young entrepreneurs across Africa. There's a window of opportunity that we might lose. Yeah. And if we don't do something between now and 2025, 2030, the ship will have sailed. Yes. There's a lot of time, effort, resources that need to be applied to investing in young people. Equinet has technology in its DNA. If you think about it, telcos generally, the telco industry has an interesting structure in that in any country, you will find that there are really 3 players, maximum 4. If you think about financial services, it's kind of the same. You've got, you might have banks proliferating, etc., but you really have 2 or 3 key players who are leading in the sector. Think about your retailers as well. You've got in this country, your ShopRite, Pick and Pay, etc. Imagine if the leading players in these sectors, in the telco sector, financial services sector, retail sector, come together and say, we want to support young entrepreneurs. Yeah. It will be transformative. Yeah. In Zimbabwe, for example, where we have our largest operation, we have 11 million subscribers. And if you think about just literally, sometimes we kind of bore people with our SMSs. But if you think about what it takes, the telco, if there is any single company that can reach millions of young people, like driving its own message, telcos can do that. And so you can imagine how they can play a leading role in terms of changing perceptions, in terms of rallying other private sector players across the value chain. And if we're intentional about supporting young people, it can really push the needle. And I think that's why we're really excited about this.
So, technology is, or innovations in technology is what will really fast-track and has fast-tracked agri-food sector into the 20th century. Would you say that, that this investment in new technology is what will then enable financial investments and increase them in the agri-food industry?
Absolutely. I mentioned earlier $17 billion going to technology in agriculture and food globally, and hardly any of that's coming into Africa. So let's attract that money and more, because the opportunities are here as well. Definitely the financial returns are also there. We have the people, we have the markets, we have the resources. So how do we start creating that culture and that appreciation for what we have, first of all, dispelling those views of agriculture or what we have locally is bad, and making it cool, making it relevant, and I think that in a way, and that's why I love Generation Africa and that focus on being relevant and cool for today's times with millennials that we're dealing with and the new types of thinking.
Tato, how would you say that tech really has had a real impact on you as a young farmer and can have on young farmers as a whole?
So when I first started farming, I went into a farm and there was abundance of water. 3 years later, there was an El Nino, and I couldn't farm the same way that I had started farming. I had to change my markets, think about it so differently. And how tech has actually improved my business is I started climate change strategies. I mean, I was talking to the sustainability professor at Wits University, was saying that by 2030 we're going to be between 2 and 4 degrees hotter than it is, and this is like 12 years from now. And they're saying that the challenges of the farmers that they had in the past 30 years will be 4 times more than the next 30 years. So it shows you that the new type of farmer needs to be resilient and dynamic, and the only way that I think that we can be able to push that is through innovation and technology. And when people think tech, they think, all this artificial intelligence and things, it's innovations, simple innovations that can just make your life simple, cut costs, make you more efficient, On my farm, we're using drip irrigation, we're using shade net, we're trying to, soil moisture probes, we're trying to do GPS mapping, soil mapping, all of these things. And it really takes you away from just being a simple farmer, but now you must think there's a scientific element that comes with it. Understanding the applications, understanding the tech, and then even just understanding the device that you're using. So there's still a lot that needs to happen for the adaptation. And it's so amazing to hear that there's so much money going towards developing all of this tech. But when you go to farm level, the technology is not being absorbed. So that's another issue that we're finding here in South Africa, is you find the need for technology, but young people can't afford it. And when you want to go and get a hydroponic system, they tell you it's so much. And it's so inaccessible to people. You want to go to the bank will ask more questions. So we have this huge technology boom, but it's not translating on the ground. It's still inaccessible to people. And we're hoping that through now, more people are taking it up through such initiatives that people will be trying to showcase their innovations, trying to make them low input, low cost, low energy, because that's what's really going to help people if we can be working off the grid. We need to train people that are on the farms now to be actually working with the technology. They need to be the ones monitoring the technology, understanding the software, maintaining it, and that's where we should be going. And I think more young people would be interested in doing that. They're thinking, I have a pickaxe and a shovel, and I'm going to be sweating the whole day. We need to get young people adapted very quickly.
And I know you firmly always say rather just stay away from the banks as a whole.
Yes. I was just thinking about that when she was speaking. That was my biggest frustration. When we started getting young people excited about agriculture, they would come to my office and they were like, my father has land or whoever. And then they would say, basically, I went to the bank and they couldn't give me money, or they asked me for my car or whatever as collateral, and I don't have that, or the interest rate is too high. So I tell people it's just not the way, and that's what incentivized me to basically start AgroLay Ventures, which invests in early stage food entrepreneurs, young people, startups who are basically doing things to transform the food systems. So we have to change the mindsets in the financial world, because we can't move. And that's what I love about this GoGettaz initiative. You know, it talks about all the different things: mentorship, market access, collaboration, bringing the policymakers together, the financiers, everyone. But then the first big thing it's coming out with is GoGettaz.
We haven't touched about the impact that governments have with the regulations, import of produce, export blockages. 1 year you can export the crop, the next year you cannot, following the latest political message. So this disincentivizes investments in agriculture tremendously. So what I expect from the GoGettaz is to see a lot of ideas that also tackle those issues and come with proposals, knowing the market situation in their specific areas. We should do this, we shouldn't do that. So this is only a first year, and you see 30 ideas will be qualified. So I'm extremely excited to see what comes, but this is something that needs to continue rolling on over the years to build a really base of material that we can tap into. Frankly, if the young generation doesn't get excited and doesn't get engaged now, we are going to miss on this huge opportunity. So we all need to be in driving and hoping that the generation Africa will get excited and come with their innovation and their drive, which is what's going to drive this in the end.
If you stepped into a classroom in a private school, in the fanciest private school in Johannesburg, or you stepped into some remote school in the middle of nowhere in Cote d'Ivoire, and you asked a kid who was 6 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? They'll say a farmer, or they would say, something in the value chain. I think that's what success would look like. Because if we get to the point where people see this as aspirational, as something really great to be involved in, as something where they can gain incomes, build wealth, I'm sure we'll close the employment gaps in the period. So the numbers are, we need 10, 11 million jobs for young people every year. We're only creating about 3-4 million, which means we need to be creating 6-7 million. If you have if you've got a critical mass of kids wanting to come into the sector, we will be able to close maybe not the entire gap, but a substantial amount of it. So I think for me that's what success would look like. Closing the gap by making agriculture cool, sexy, not just for young people, but for kids.
Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you. Don't forget about that GoGettaz competition. Go into the website and see all the details in case you're unsure of anything and you can't remember everything that was said in the video. But it's for a fantastic prize, 2 cash prizes, $50,000. 1 male and 1 female agripreneur will both be chosen, and they'll be chosen in a forum in September in Ghana. And I think that'll be really exciting to see what comes through there. One remark for me, I think that would be just so beautiful, is that, when it comes to creating a legacy, I think what's always sort of said or what's thought about in my mind is that you need to be able to do something that's worth writing about, or make sure that you are someone that is able to write something that's worth reading. And how beautiful would it be to be able to write into the history books that the fact that we were able to tap into this trillion-dollar industry as young African agripreneurs, and we're able to solve the large scale of unemployment on the continent, and have become the top of entrepreneurship and agripreneurship in the world. And I think that would be a beautiful legacy to leave as Africans. Thank you very much.